Imagine a civilization so advanced that over 4,000 years ago, they were performing surgery, mapping the stars, tracking time better than most of us track our screen time, and building skyscraper-sized triangles without forklifts, cranes, or caffeine. No, this isn't sci-fi. This is ancient Egypt, where being ahead of your time wasn't a compliment. It was just Tuesday. Let's talk about the obvious flex first, the pyramids. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built around 2560 BCE, is so precisely aligned with the cardinal points that if you rotated your house that accurately, your GPS would apologize. The base is almost a perfect square, and the difference in side lengths is smaller than the margin of error on your last takeout order. They moved over 2 million limestone blocks, some weighing up to 80 tons. That's like hauling a whale for each stone, without forklifts, mind you. They probably used ramps, sledges, and maybe some divine muscle. Nobody agrees on how they did it, which means either we're missing something, or aliens have better architectural taste than we thought. But Egypt wasn't just big rocks and sand. Their society was shockingly sophisticated. Like, where's the Wi-Fi levels of advanced for the Bronze Age? Contrary to popular belief, the pyramid workers weren't slaves. They were skilled laborers who lived in specially built workers' villages. They were paid in food, beer, and healthcare. In other words, they had better job benefits than most interns today. And don't sleep on ancient Egyptian women. They could own land, start businesses, and even divorce their husbands. Some were doctors, priestesses, and even pharaohs. Enter Hatshepsut. She ruled for over 20 years and launched trade missions, built monuments, and probably ghosted more suitors than Cleopatra ever dreamed of. Egypt was out here giving women LinkedIn profiles before most societies let them speak in public. Let's talk writing. Hieroglyphs weren't just emoji on steroids. They were a legit written language, but they weren't exactly fast to write. So, the Egyptians created hieratic, a cursive pen and ink version of hieroglyphs. Think of it as hieroglyphs in sweatpants. Same idea, way more comfortable for daily use. Then came demotic, basically shorthand hieratic, super simplified, fast to write, and so abstract, it looked like your pen ran out halfway through every word. Hieroglyphs were for temples, hieratic was for formal paperwork, and demotic was for, let me just scribble this quick receipt for your sheep purchase. It was the ancient equivalent of typing LOL instead of, that was genuinely amusing. And they didn't stop at writing. They straight up invented paper. Papyrus scrolls were the USB sticks of the ancient world. They wrote everything on them: tax records, love letters, business contracts, and even spell books. Imagine being cursed because someone filed the wrong papyrus in HR. Speaking of precision, the Egyptians were borderline obsessed with time. They divided the day into 24 hours, thousands of years before your smartwatch did. They had sundials for the day and water clocks called clepsydras for the night. These guys didn't just know what time it was. They invented the idea of checking the time every 5 minutes during a meeting. Why the obsession? Agriculture, and not just because farming is a fun way to get sunburned. Every year the Nile flooded, basically nature's version of free fertilizer. The Egyptians didn't just ride the flood wave, they engineered it. They built canals, irrigation systems, and water basins to control the floods and maximize crop yield. Honestly, if the Nile had an HR department, Egypt would be employee of the millennium. They grew wheat, barley, flax, onions, garlic, lettuce, dates, you name it, and they used a tool called a shadoof to lift water. It's like an ancient seesaw with a bucket on one end and a counterweight on the other. It's so simple and effective that people still use it today. Meanwhile, my $600 smart sprinkler app won't connect to Wi-Fi. Let's get medical. Ancient Egyptians were practicing surgery while most civilizations were still figuring out how to not eat soapberries. They had scalpels, forceps, tweezers, and even dental tools, which means they looked inside people's mouths on purpose. Brave souls. One medical text, the Edwin Smith Papyrus, describes 48 cases of trauma surgery and how to treat them. They diagnosed things, took pulses, stitched wounds, and even used honey for its antibacterial properties. Because apparently they knew what honey does before your grandma put it in tea. The Ebers Papyrus includes hundreds of prescriptions for everything from constipation to contraception. Yes, they were figuring out birth control 3,500 years ago, while half the modern world is still arguing about it. They also had a mental health section. That's right, they weren't just worried about broken bones, they were worried about broken vibes. But here's the twist. Science and magic worked hand in hand. You'd get a treatment and a spell, just to be safe. Imagine your doctor handing you ibuprofen and then whispering a protective chant while circling your head with incense. Honestly, I'd take it. And now, mummies. Death in ancient Egypt wasn't the end. It was a full-blown logistical event. First, they removed your organs, except the heart, which they believed was the seat of intelligence. That's right, the brain? Tossed. Useless jelly. The heart was the MVP. They dried the body using natron salt, wrapped it like a pharaoh's burrito, and stashed it in a tomb filled with food, wine, clothes, board games, and instructions for navigating the afterlife. Literal cheat codes. The Book of the Dead was the ultimate walkthrough, complete with monsters, moral tests, and soul weighing against a feather. Fail, and you get eaten by a crocodile lion hippo demon named Amit. Hardcore. Tombs weren't just graves, they were spiritual prep zones. Think of it like checking into a 5-star hotel where you stay forever and the minibar is stocked with wine and beetle amulets. Even their art was ahead of its time. People were drawn in profile with eyes facing forward and shoulders squared. Why? Because it looked more complete. It was symbolic, not realistic. Art wasn't about capturing the moment, it was about capturing eternity. I mean, what's more eternal than a cat statue, right? Speaking of aesthetics, ancient Egyptians had style. Linen clothes for the heat, wigs for the bald, and eyeliner for everyone. Not just for glam. Eyeliner helped protect against sun glare and infections. Their makeup had SPF and antibacterial properties. Meanwhile, my sunscreen expired in 2019. Perfume? Check. Oils? Check. Henna tattoos, lipstick, mirrors, they had it all. Ancient Egypt was basically the original Instagram influencer culture, minus the hashtags. And at the core of it all was the concept of Ma'at. Balance, order, truth, justice. It wasn't just spiritual fluff. It governed everything. Law, ethics, the cosmos. Pharaohs weren't just rulers. They were expected to keep the universe running smoothly. No pressure or anything. Living in harmony with Ma'at meant being kind, honest, fair, and generous. Basically, ancient Egyptians were expected to not be jerks, because eternity was a long time to regret being rude. So let's recap. They mastered time, medicine, farming, architecture, writing, art, fashion, gender equity, and spirituality. Thousands of years before modern societies stopped believing in flat earths and started washing their hands. They weren't just ahead of their neighbors, they were ahead of us. And the wildest part? We're still finding out new things about them. Lost tombs, forgotten texts, unexplained tools. Ancient Egypt is still dropping content, 3,000 years after it ended. Now that's a content creator. So if you thought this was impressive, wait till you see what Mesopotamia was up to. Or how ancient medicine evolved into some truly weird stuff. Or how entire cities vanished overnight. Smash that subscribe button and join me on the next episode of Lost History, where we uncover more ancient genius, mind-blowing facts, and just a little light mocking of our less impressive ancestors. Go on, the gods of binge-watching demand tribute.